Welcome back, everybody. I'm glad you decided to join us again. If you remember from last time, we dug up a little information about the 3 higher-profile killings of these serial murders, these series of counterweight killings. So just a quick little death tally so far. Of the 3 less important people, we've had Mundy, an associate of Carlotta's, who was killed by being hung upside down and messed up pretty badly. It was unclear exactly how he died, but apparently it was fairly gruesome. There was Malachite, who was killed by having most of his back excavated in a fairly gruesome way, and he's a troll, and a big one too, so that took some serious doing. We were present for both of those, so we ended up as sort of their lead and only suspect at the time. Fortunately, we were not present when Reagan was killed, the dwarf and associate of the von Uberwalds. He drove his carriage off the side of the bridge and into the river Ankh, and we found bite marks as if he had been bitten by something or another. Additionally, there were 3 more deaths since then. There was Matham, who was the professor of esoteric occultism at Unseen University. He was killed by being pretty thoroughly poisoned. They said even the worms wouldn't touch him. Additionally, one of the patrician's clerks was killed by being drowned in a vat of wine, and a member of the Merchants Guild was killed through some means we're not exactly sure how. We do know his name, and that he was killed without any witnesses around, and that's all we've really been able to weasel out of people so far. We've come in and out of suspicion, at sometimes being, again, the main and only suspect, and we definitely get the sense that Vimes, who is the head of the City Watch, doesn't really trust us, doesn't like us. Nevertheless, we're free from prison, and having been turned into a werewolf, we continue our investigation. The last little note I'll say before we proceed on to the von Uberwalds is that since we are a werewolf, we can use our sense of smell, and we have definitively established that at least the same being was present at all of the murders so far. There's this sort of magenta cloud with specks of what I imagine to be octarine, the magic element, present in them. So that's looking as though some sort of magical being is also a serial killer. Probably didn't know that we were a werewolf, as was pointed out, because they didn't kill us properly. They just ran us through with a golden sword, which is now vanished somewhere. That was what everyone is sort of looking for. So everything is sort of all up in the air right now. And we've sort of run out of leads for the 3 new murders, and all we know now is that there was a mysterious moss that was found by our body at the scene of our death near Saturnalia. So, knowing as we do that Count von Uberwald is a keen botanist, I think we ought to get back and pay him a visit. So let's see.
Oh, it is you, sir. I'm just as thrilled. Who would Sir like to see this time?
I kind of like that the butler doesn't really waste any time with pleasantries. You know, before we see the Count, I kind of wonder if we ask to see Carlotta.
I'd like to see Carlotta. Is she home? I will go and check.
That's right, he's going to go and check, and at this point in the game, being left alone for any stretch of time is essentially code for one thing, which means it's werewolf time.
While the butler was gone, I slipped into my wolf form. A purple scent stretched across the hallway, and I instantly knew it was Carlotta. But that wasn't all. The richness of her odor told me something else. Carlotta was a werewolf, just like me.
So, as if there was really any doubt in the matter.
It seems that Carlotta is not in her room.
Take a message. Tell her to meet me at the Café Ankh later tonight.
As Sir wishes.
If Carlotta was the werewolf who infected me, I wanted to speak to her as soon as possible. Sheesh! You'd think a guy could take one kiss and wake up the same shape next day, wouldn't you?
Yeah, Lewton just can't really catch a break. I'm not sure why that ejects us from the mansion, but whatever. That does confirm that even if she wasn't the one that turned us, Carlotta von Uberwald is indeed a werewolf. Not that this wasn't sort of foreshadowed, but it's nice to get some confirmation. Also, I am not sure I'm playing this game on a new computer at this point, and I think I might have got a few more of the scents identified, so I'm just going to take a quick second before we go back and finish things to turn into wolf form here and show you the scents that I've confirmed. Finding a scent in 2 different locations seems like it generally confirms for you who the owner of the scent is. So we know that Gasboat is this light blue, River Ankh is of course green, Trawl Perfume, I'm pronouncing it the Lewton way, Trawl, is this other light blue, and the fuchsia is our serial killer. I knew that the purple that was by our gravesite was laid at Ilse Barber, which we probably could have guessed, but which was nice to have confirmed. The dark green is the moss found by our body. I was able to confirm that Sapphire was one of the other scents present, of course, in Sapphire's dressing room. But what's interesting about that is that Sapphire was also present in our office at some point. Now, we know she must have come to drop off the letter about meeting with Therma, but still, she left sort of a strong scent, so that's kind of interesting. The apple color that we found both in Sapphire's dressing room and at the scene of the crime was Mankin. We knew he removed a coin from Mundy's boots, so it makes sense he'd be at the scene of the crime. But I wasn't really aware he had gone back and talked to Sapphire that much. I guess he might have, being the owner of the bar, but I don't know, he struck me as somebody that wouldn't have cared. So that was interesting. Navy is Vimes. We could confirm that now by going to the rooftops at Salis and Fedra and matching up this Navy scent with the one there. But I won't, because it's not important to. This other blue is Mundy. Nabi was light blue, we found that before. This maroon showed up.
The maroon scent reminded me of iron somehow.
In our office, I think we could probably hazard a guess that it's Al-Khali, but we can't quite match that up just yet. And of course, the purple we just discovered to be Carlotta, so that's sort of a rundown of the scents. If we run into any new ones, you'll make a note of that, but that's where we are for now. Anyway, back to the mansion.
Who would Sarah like to see this time?
Let's finally get the Moss question answered. I know that may not seem like the most thrilling, but there must be some boring moments in the detective's life as well.
Can I see the Count?
I am not in a position to know how good your vision is, but you will
All right,
see the Count, which I believe is what Sir actually meant in Sir's untutored way.
The Count's health was getting worse. He wasn't making much sense.
Is that you? I knew you'd come for me sooner or later. Is it time? Is it time already? It's been such a long time, hasn't it? We've had fun together, haven't we?
I wonder who he's talking about.
Soon enough.
Count?
Soon enough, my dear. Soon enough.
Count? It's Lewton.
He
Whoa.
cannot hear you.
Why not?
It's almost his time.
I've seen some scary things in my time. I've seen men driven mad by money or women. I've seen wars where neither side has known what they were fighting over. I've seen Nabi getting out of the shower, and believe me, that was no picnic. I didn't really discover what terror was until I found myself talking to a 7-foot-high skeleton with a scythe. Your death!
Am I? You know, I wondered why I was carrying the scythe around.
Am I?
Are you what? A selfish, bitter man who has yet to squander his one last chance at redemption.
Okay.
Am I dead?
No. It's not your time.
I thought you might have missed me the other day when I was stabbed and you've only just got around to me.
I'm famously punctual.
So why are you here?
I've come out for the Count, so to speak.
Oh, well, that's a shame. I was hoping to ask him a few questions.
You seem remarkably calm for one who's just seen the defeater of empires, the swallower of oceans, the thief of years, the ultimate reality, the harvester of mankind, and the assassin against whom no lock will hold. That's me, in case you have trouble with long
All right,
sentences.
okay.
It's been that kind of week. How long has he got?
That depends on you.
On me? I thought our time was allocated by the fates.
It is true that fate is the ultimate master of life and death. But even fate takes a back seat to the laws of narrative causality.
I don't understand.
Really? Who said you were supposed to?
You might give me a clue.
Let's just say that the actions of one person may change the way the whole story is told.
I don't understand.
Don't worry. It'll all become clear to you at the end.
That's right. We are invoking narrative causality, which is sort of a pet topic of the Discworld series. Basically, the Discworld universe is one which is built around story, and so appropriately, the actions of protagonists like Lewton here can have a warping effect on probability and all that for the rest of the events. It's sort of their cute way of explaining all of the remarkable coincidences that protagonists in stories usually get themselves into by officially codifying it into the hard-coded rules of the universe. So that's what this is. Our conversations with the Count will now bounce back and forth between the Count and Death. The Count can't hear us all the time, but if we say something that particularly strikes his interest, he may chime in. So, let's see what he's got to say.
How come you're here?
I came on my horse.
What is it? A skeletal horse whose hooves spark with flames with each step?
No. Just my horse. I call him Binky.
And he's not a skeleton?
He happens to be very well fed and looked after, thank you very much.
I still don't understand why you're here. I mean, you're Death. Shouldn't you be everywhere?
I am everywhere.
But you're here.
Yes. As well. Don't try to work it out. Even I don't fully understand it. It involves really complicated numbers.
You turn up like this for everyone?
Generally, I'm only expected to make an actual appearance on special occasions.
And this is a special occasion?
Not yet. I've arrived ahead of time. But there's going to be a lot of business in Ankh-Morpork soon, so it doesn't hurt for me to get here a little early.
You wouldn't care to tell me more about this, I suppose?
The immediate future is not a matter on which I propose to enlighten you, no.
That's interesting. He knows the future, and presumably also knows the present and the past, which means he knows what's going to go down. It's also fairly ominous that he's talking about a lot of business happening soon in Ankh-Morpork. Yeah, let's see if we can find out a little more about him.
How come I can see you? Is it something to do with me being a werewolf?
In a sense. It has much more to do with certain other matters.
Such as?
Ordinarily, I am only perceived by those who are about to die.
So you are invisible? That must be useful.
I'm not invisible, as such. People just can't see me. They won't allow themselves to do it. Until it's time, of course. Wizards can see me, and cats. Odd, really, but there you go.
But I can see you.
Indeed. People in a state of heightened awareness sometimes stop seeing what they expect to see and start seeing what is really there.
Like with Gaspode.
Frankly, I think your seeing me has more to do with your quest for the golden sword.
You know about that?
I've been around. I hear things.
Why should the sword be a factor?
Well, it's more to do with narrative causality, as I said.
It's not really a quest. I mean, I'm just investigating a few murders.
Believe me, I know. I was there.
Yes, he was there, wasn't he? But anyway, what he's saying in a very roundabout way, like I said before, is that We are the protagonist, and therefore we can interact with cosmic beings such as death.
You mentioned narrative causality before.
Did I? I must be becoming careless.
Why? Aren't you allowed to discuss it?
It's not exactly against the rules, but it might ruin it if I told you.
Ruin what?
The story.
I see. Well, that's been about as helpful as it's going to be. Now let's get down to the actual questioning. And we could ask him about the moss right away, but I think we've got a whole series of new things to talk about here. So let's see if we can bring that up. First off, I wonder if the Count knows anything about Carlotta.
It seems a woman that I've been involved with is a werewolf.
Indeed.
Her name's Carlotta. She's the mistress of the house, I guess.
Carlotta, Yes, of course she is. Couldn't be part of the von Uberwalds if she wasn't, You'd be a werewolf, too, if you married her.
The von Uberwalds are all werewolves.
Really? How do you know that?
How do I know that, eh? How could I not know that? I was married myself, you know. Do you remember my wife?
Yes.
No.
Before your time,
No one was before my time.
You know, it's true that Death's kind of hamming it up here, but that is consistent with his portrayal in the books. Interesting, so every von Uberwald is a werewolf then. I guess that means the Countess that Carlotta replaced, and Carlotta herself, obviously. And that means the Count must also be a werewolf, which is something we've thought before. Now, we're not quite sure how potent his werewolfic powers are, or what he's able to do. Excuse me, it could be that he's completely confined to this room, and that's just all that there is to it. But let's see if they know anything else about the other topics of interest, including murder.
Do you know anything about Reagan's murder?
Of course.
You were there?
Well, yes. I have to be. But this is very irregular.
Of course. You know about all these murders, don't you? I mean, you're basically an accessory after the fact. Or possibly before the fact.
Young man, I am the fact.
Well, tell me everything you know.
Are you sure? It would take millions of years.
I like that.
I meant about this case. We could stop anyone else from being killed.
No. Absolutely not. You can't expect me to be a witness in a murder inquiry. I'm going to take the fifth.
The fifth what?
No one ever says what fifth. They just take it. And I'll have the 6th, 7th, and 15th through 23rd, just to be on the safe side.
So you won't tell me anything?
Oh, lots of things. I like to talk to a man who likes to talk.
But you won't tell me anything about the murders?
I will not. Supposing that caught on. You think I want to spend every day in a witness box?
Even though Death said he wouldn't tell me anything, I had a suspicion that I might be able to learn something if I could just trip him up. I'd have to be careful, though. The last thing I wanted was to get Death upset with me. He's not a guy you want as your enemy.
You know, you might say that Death is only included in this game as sort of fan service. He's a big character in the books, and you know, it's fun to have him around and stuff like that. But this to me completely redeems it, because the fact that Lewton is literally going to be pumping Death for information about murders it's just so Lewton. I just really like it. Let's see if he knows anything about anything.
Can't you just tell me who killed Mundy?
I won't squeal, copper. No one will ever say that Death is a pigeon on a stool, you doity... you doity rodent of some sort. I say, this is fun, isn't it?
Death, of course, is just having a great time.
You can at least tell me why the murderer killed Reagan, Mundy, and Malachite. Surely that wouldn't be a problem.
Look, if I tell you about him, where does it stop? No. I will tell you nothing.
I think it's too late for that.
Bugger. I don't suppose you could forget I said that.
Sure. Thanks for eliminating half of my suspects. So, the murderer was male. Well, that put Carlotta and Sapphire in the clear.
Perfect. Perfection. So, we know now that the murderer, the serial murderer, is a male of some kind. And that eliminates, again, Sapphire and Carlotta, who were, I will admit, and Ilsa too, I guess, who were fairly interesting suspects. So it's not necessarily that they weren't involved, that they weren't working with someone who was responsible for this, but they themselves didn't do the deed. So that's good to know.
I think the murderer I'm looking for is some kind of beast.
No doubt you will find out soon enough.
Not particularly helpful. But if you'll recall, we happen to know that the clerk was drowned in a vat of wine, Matham was poisoned in the Widdershins wing. We don't quite know about the merchant's murder, but we know some salient details about it. So...
According to the gatekeeper at the Merchants Guild, nobody witnessed Gaiman's stabbing.
Gaiman wasn't stabbed.
Really? How did he die?
He was strangled.
Thanks.
Blast. I didn't see that one coming.
Just absolute perfection. So that's what we needed. We now have nailed down the deaths of all three of those characters. I guess we'll see how that will become important later. Like, we'll just ask one more general question.
Do you know anything about the counterweight killings?
I already told you that I cannot discuss the details of my work with you.
You know, that being said, though, I guess we do have a few more topics of interest.
Do you know anything about jewels?
Jewels? Shiny. Not much use for anything except looking pretty.
Count von Uberwald?
Has it turned cold again? I can't tell.
There's life in the old Count yet.
There will be. Right up until the end.
I guess that's true.
What about you?
I'll be there.
No, I mean, do you know anything about jewels?
I once had to acquire a diamond for a friend.
Where did you find it?
In a temple. They thought it was the tear of a god.
Was it?
No. Gods never weep. Sometimes the imagination of mankind astonishes me.
You don't know anything about gold-plated jewels?
Sorry, no.
Well, that's about all for that.
Do you know anything about golden swords?
I've seen a couple in my time.
Such as?
Oh, I don't know. If you've seen one golden sword, you've seen them all.
True enough. I don't think I've asked this one yet.
Does dead men's pointy boots mean anything to you?
They use it at the Unseen University, do they not?
So I understand.
It is accurate. The wizards do have pointy boots. It's traditional.
I think it has some other meaning.
That would explain why I have heard it mentioned in the guilds. Their boots are seldom pointy.
You can actually come here first and have Death show up and just give you a little hint about what you're supposed to do with the phrase, but I like the idea of just coming here once. I don't know, somehow coming back and finding him standing here and asking him questions 3 or 4 times kind of kills the scene for me. I like that it's just once and we pump him for information and we're done. As I said, I really enjoy that. It's a very Lewton-esque way to solve problems. Oh, Death's showing up for the count? Well, time to pump him for information just like anybody else. So the reason we came here in the beginning was to find something out about this moss before the count kicks it. So let's see if he can tell us anything.
I don't suppose you know anything about mosses.
Moss? Did you say moss? Plants. Yes. Lots of plants here. Can't remember much about them these days. The memory fails. There are books, though. I forget where. Ah, yes. The library's apocrypha. All the books are there, you know.
May I use the library?
Eh? What was that, my boy? The library. Ah, yes. The library's apocrypha. All the books are there, you know. You can use it if it will help your inquiries. How go your inquiries? Have you heard from Reagan?
No, not yet.
This room contains the von Uberwald's Libraris Apocrypha. So will, I trust, be careful not to damage any of the priceless tomes housed within.
I'll be careful.
One would be very upset if one was to return to find, sir, perhaps folding paper animals from a priceless folio edition of the Dictionary of Eye-Watering Words.
What are they?
They are books, sir.
I realize that. What are they about?
The Libraris Apocrypha is a collection of obscurities and rare volumes from across the continent. If knowledge were an animal, the Libraris would be a great dragon. Sir, by the same scale, would be a kebab on an ant's barbecue.
I'll be careful.
Good old Butler. So, we now have access to the library, and more importantly, to the index cards, which help us look up a large variety of topics. It's really the second major addition to our power set we've gotten this late in the game. Let's just scroll through and see what we can find randomly.
I grabbed a book from the shelves. Jane's All the World's Siege Weapons. Fascinating stuff. If I was planning to storm a castle and I had the defense budget of a small barony. My hand fell upon the Dictionary of Eye-Watering Words. It lived up to its name. I skimmed through the section of the library that looked the most used. I found a copy of The Joy of Tantric Sex, with illustrations for the advanced student. It raised an interesting question as to which of the von Uberwald household had thumbed the pages so thoroughly.
Sounds about right for old world aristocratic families.
I found a copy of My Life Among the Sponge-Eating Coral House-Dwelling Pygmies by General Sir Roderick Purdy. It was no help at all.
No, I suspect not.
I found a copy of Stripfettel's Believe It or Not Grimoire. I learned that the average dung beetle ate more than its own weight in dung each day, but nothing that was going to help me. I could probably pick random books indefinitely if I wanted, but I figured it might be more useful if I looked up something specific.
Yeah, I think so. You know, this is interesting, but not until I played the game this time did I realize the glass ceiling. I really like it. It kind of opens the area for me. I thought it was a sort of dank, dungeony place. Probably because that's the libraries that I've experienced in my life. But no, I like this. This is a kind of an aristocratic feel, like I said. So we've got these index cards here, and probably predictably, we either need to interface them with a topic or with a library item to look them up. So for instance, we could look up the gold-plated jewels, see if we could find anything about it.
None of the books on jewels or antiquities I could find said anything about a gold-plated jewel. I couldn't write off the possibility that there was something in the library that I hadn't managed to find, though. If I knew what it was called, it'd be easier.
And from that we can tell we probably need a little bit more information to before we start looking up stuff about that. See if we look at the index cards originally.
I could mess up the filing system, I suppose, if I wanted the butler to eviscerate me with sarcasm.
Yeah, he probably
the next
wouldn't
time
care
I
for
saw
that.
him. A far better plan would be to use the index to look up a book on a particular subject.
Right, as I said. Lewton. Careful, Lewton, what are you doing? That's what happens if you look at them. I don't know why, that little glitchy thing at Lewton. Alright, easy.
The books were all neatly indexed by a vast series of cards in a wooden case. It looked like the von Uberwalds were using an ancient version of Huey's octal system of indexing. It was complicated, but I reckoned I could at least use it to find out what books they had on a particular subject, and then wander around until I saw a bookshelf with the right number on it.
I figures they wouldn't use the decimal system. Too easy for them, I suppose. Anyway, here's the moss, so let's see what we can find.
I found a copy of Orange Crates on the Nature of Plants. The book was a tediously detailed study of the plant kingdom, and one of the most boring things I've ever read. But I found the moss in there. Apparently it was a lycanthrope, a type of animate moss with crude locomotion, found only in the worst sewers in the most decrepit urban areas. Apparently the lycanthrope looked like harmless moss until something to eat walked by. Then they transformed into a deadly lichen and devoured their prey, at least as long as it was small enough. Otherwise they just clung on for dear life.
Got it, so... whatever we were looking for apparently came from the sewers, where it picked up a lycanthrope. Of course. Boo. This is a neat little tutorial just showing us that we can look up things from our inventory or things from our notebook. I already knew that, of course, but it's just a nice example of game design there.
I checked through the library and found some ancient plans of the city of Ankh. There was an intricate sewer system beneath the city. It must be thousands of years old. It would be in quite a state if it was still around, and as far as I could tell, it would be under the waterline if there wasn't a drought on. Given the rains that we'd had recently, I could only find one section of sewer that might be above water. There was a shallow sewer running from the Magdalen Bridge around the rimward side of the Royal Winter Palace of the Kings of Ankh, now the home of the patrician. I guess the designers weren't allowed to put sewers under the palace grounds, which might have been why the Royal Summer Palace of the Kings of Ankh was a long way from Ankh-Morpork. That and the stench of the river Ankh, anyway.
Wonder if that's true of real royal palaces, if they worry about that. Anyway, using the library system, we have managed to find a new location, the sewers.
A shallow sewer running from the brass bridge and then around the rimward edge of the patrician's palace.
And I think that will be an excellent place for us to tackle next time, as we remain hot on the trail of our murderer and the serial killer. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. I will see you next time.